How is everybody doing? Awesome, good. It's lunch, it's the late hour, so I'm the wake up act. I think that's what they call me. And the bio is super interesting. I was reading it, I was like, whoa, that's a really interesting capture of parts of my life that I would never have thought to put in the bio. So do read it. But also, this is our 29th year as a design build firm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and second time here. And one of the coolest things about my job, I think, is that I get paid to think. And so when Patrick called and said, hey, would you be willing to think about this idea, this subject, and I got to spend the next 3 or 4 months thinking. And so what you're going to see is a brand new presentation. I have not presented it before, so I'm asking forgiveness ahead of time if I glance at my notes for a second. It is the culmination of a lot of reading, on a number of interviews with senior engineers at Netflix, behavioral psychologists, neuroscientists, and trying to pull together all of these things around this idea of how are we able to do this dance of being human or being technology and thinking like a human at the same time. How do we keep our clients, our customers, our staff, all of this is all people, right? We're all people. We're all tech companies. That's a fun thing to say up here. But we're also all people companies. We're made up of people doing stuff. And how do we relate and connect to the technology, to these objects, to these services? So I think it'll be fun. Are you ready? Yes. All right. Okay. So I'm going to start with, what is the job of a milkshake? Clay Christensen is a Harvard Business School marketing genius, I guess, and his firm was called in by a major fast food chain to look at how they could improve their milkshake sales. And they had tried all kinds of things. They tried making it thicker, more flavors, chunkier, all kinds of different things, and it wasn't having the kind of success that they wanted. And so they called them in, and they went and started to look at the situation. And one of the members on their team said, you know, what if we asked this question a little bit differently? And they turned it around. Instead of asking how can we make the product better, they thought, I wonder why people are hiring this product. Why are they hiring this milkshake? What job is the milkshake performing for these people? And so they went to the restaurant, and they discovered that something like 60% of the milkshakes were sold before 8 a.m. That wasn't what they were expecting. So then they went back and they caught the people as they were leaving the store with milkshake in hand and said, excuse me, why did you hire that milkshake? Now, they didn't say it like that. They used different language, but that was the general gist of it. And it turned out that they all had commutes. They all had fairly lengthy commutes, and they needed something to do. The car had an empty cup holder. They had an extra hand, and they needed something to do. They'd had breakfast, and they knew that by 10 o'clock they were going to be hungry, and they didn't want to be hungry right after they got to work. And they had hired other things. They had hired carrots. Didn't work very well. They'd hired bananas. That was like 3 minutes. That was over. Donuts, too crumbly, too messy, too sticky. Right? They'd hired all kinds of other things to do this job. It turns out milkshake was the right viscosity, the right amount of sugar. Not too, it wasn't like a Snickers where they felt ashamed and dirty after eating it. It was just about right, and it sat and made them feel full until lunchtime. When you're looking at all of the really cool tech that's out there, whether it's software tech, computer tech, or physical tech, a bicycle is technology, right? We all get that. There's a formula on how to ride a bike, and that formula is this relationship between torque and weight and speed, right? And it changes how we design bikes so that they're easier to ride. Same thing with everything that we use. What is the job that we're hiring it for? Do you have a job description? If you're considering picking up a new piece of tech because it's cool, does it actually have a role to play in your organization? Have you gone through the process of writing out that job description? And which product does the job best? Not all of the jobs, but the specific job that you're hiring for. We've all hired people in this room, and we've all thought about what the task is that I want that person to do, and how can I best choose the right person to perform that task. I always think it's good that we get this out in the open. What are we after today? What's the point? By the way, there's this video I wanted to play, but I can't because the guy swears. There's this meme, this guy from India who does these little mantra well-being videos sitting by a stream. He does one on PowerPoint, having no point and taking away your power. It's worth watching. But one of the things that is very, very true is that we have taught ourselves inadvertently that presentations need to have a point. A tool that was designed for business, right, specifically to make a point, to organize a presentation, became an educational tool that taught children that when you make a presentation or do something, you need to have a point, which is in some ways the antithesis of learning, which is just to be open to ideas and to explore and to be creative. So I'm going to challenge us today, even though I've put some goals on the board here, that this presentation maybe has no point. Can we maybe get around that idea? How about that? All right, so we're going to talk about how to select tech, how to apply the lens of a human to that selection. We're going to question why and how and what we measure. And we're going to question how and what we buy. And we're going to try to understand a little bit more about our human connection and relationship to technology. So I'm going to start with my 6 flags. The Pauly Shore, the Needy Partner, 31 Flavors, Brainiac, and Dumb and Dumber. Don't you hate it when people read their slides to you? It's so annoying, especially when it says there will be 6 points and there are only 4. What? Pauly Shore. Do you guys remember Clippy? Clippy the paperclip? Saw really a great meme that it was Darth Vader and Luke. Darth Vader takes off his helmet and he's Clippy and Luke is ChatGPT. AI has been around for a long time. It's not something that we're new to. And I think sometimes I'm going to use this just to talk a little bit about ChatGPT and Jasper. And by the way, there is more than one AI out there, okay? It's not just ChatGPT. Clippy was launched in 1996. You guys know what time Clippy died? 2007. That paperclip lived for 11 years. I couldn't believe it when I found that out. But the reality is that AI has been working behind the scenes with spell check, grammar check, making suggestions, templates, all kinds of things trying to help us do our job a little bit better. So what is the value? So the paperclip was a massive failure, but Jasper and ChatGPT are very successful. So what's different? How is this tool different? How can we, instead of being terrified of what this thing might do or be, think about how we could use it? So one of the things that I have been messing around with is asking it to do the things that I'm not very good at. So for example, let's say I wanted to explain what cognitive dissonance is. You guys all know what cognitive dissonance is, right? Or locus of control. This is big word day. So I go to ChatGPT and I say, explain to me what cognitive dissonance means. And it comes back with a very nice answer about the conflict between two ideas or two different wants and a reality, right? And I might be, because of who I am, say, yeah, this is a great way to talk about religion and how people who are, the system of beliefs that they've built and their identities connected to it, and they struggle with things like science and evolution because their brain doesn't like these two things. Well, if you bring that to a 3rd grader, they're going to look at you like, what are you talking about, right? Or if you maybe bring this to this room, you're going to look at me the same way. So, okay, Jasper, tell me how to explain cognitive dissonance to a 3rd grader. Oh, that's like when you want ice cream, but it's going to ruin your appetite, or that you shouldn't have it, but you want it anyway. Okay, Jasper, tell me how to explain cognitive dissonance to a 3rd grader who's on the spectrum. Tell me, GPT or Jasper, how to explain cognitive dissonance to a Texan. Can't. I'm just kidding, it was a joke, come on. Minnesotan, Israeli, Congolese, and in each of these permutations, it comes back with social references and ways of describing things that would be appealing to that particular listener. I'm not able to do that because I am none of those things. I don't have those references. Maybe I am on the spectrum, but I'm not going to be able to communicate as clearly as somebody is. So how can we use this to bridge those gaps to increase our ability to communicate in a way that is more cohesive, more digestible, more approachable, more human. The problem with AI that is giving you help when you don't want it is that it's annoying, it's irritating. And likewise, AI that gives you information that doesn't help you, right? When you're at a help desk and the chat bot wants you to go through a long menu of things, that's not right. Or your computer's not working and it says, well, you should log onto this website. You know, but my computer's not working. Oh, also commission salespeople, the worst. Can we all agree? The absolute worst. Nobody wants to buy from commission sales, right? Does anybody enjoy going into a store where there are commission salespeople? They're annoying, right? They're right there next to you at the wrong time. And they're not really listening, they're just trying to push something. It's not human. It's not the kind of engagement. Even if you're a business and you know that, yeah, commission sales, drives this, drives this, you know that when you're on the other end of that experience, you don't have a good time. So why would you subject your consumers and your clients to that experience? Second flag. So this is, you're looking at software. Is it a good fit or not? Brainiac versus Dumb and Dumber. Well, it's either got an overly complex user interface, it's got a process that only makes sense to somebody who's an engineer, it's not intuitive, there's too many pick lists, there's too many there's just too much there. That is a dumb system. You thought it was going to be the Brainiac, didn't you? It's the dumb system. Doesn't know enough about you to know what parts to give you. And then we have the other one, which is overthought it. And it's a UI that is so overly childish and easy that it limits your abilities to do what you want to be able to do with it. So the two sides, right? The endlessly customizable with a million billion parts, and we've oversimplified it, and you can't actually make it fit your business, your tone, your market, the things that you want to do, your client base. Then we have the Baskin-Robbins, aka the Swiss Army knife. When this is everything. Builder-Trend has a lot of things, right? And when a system tries to do everything at the same time, it rarely does them all well. So we are 100% of everything, we can solve all your problems, we're the mega platform. To me, this is a flag. Let's go through the looking glass. Oh, this flag, this is the needy boyfriend or girlfriend or partner or they or whatever it is, the needy person in your life, the over-attentive. This is the tool that nags and you can't be away from it for a few seconds. If you visited any of these websites, you may have been inundated by what I would call a needy partner. Right? This is the pop-up. You're trying to read the content? Subscribe now. You're trying to read the content? Would you like to subscribe? You're trying to read the content? Can we help you? No. Right? Go away. I will ping the little box on the side if I want to ask you a question, and if I want to subscribe, I know how to subscribe. You don't need to ask me more than one time, and especially not in the first 15 seconds of landing on your website. That should not be the very first thing that pops up. So we got to go back out of this little wormhole that we've dug for ourselves. And I want to talk a little bit about what's going on up top. So what does it mean? If buying is an emotional process, and we know that it's an emotional process, we've been taught that it's an emotional process, then selling is really just the process of attaching or appealing to those emotional receptors. That's all that is. You're COVID and you're looking for the little thing that you can plug into. Is it too soon for a COVID joke? All right, so if we know this, how are you making your tech decisions? If we know that buying is emotional, and people who know that buying is emotional know that selling is emotional, how are you buying your tech? Are you 100% objective? Are you numbering things and valuing things, putting it on some sort of a scale to evaluate exactly, and then removing all of your emotion from the process? Are you able to do that? And the bigger question is, should you? Should you be objective in how you buy your tech? What is the value in being objective? We're not an objective species, we're an emotional species. We're a social species. So why would we care about being objective? Ian McGilchrist is an Oxford man, and he's written a number of wonderful books. Some of them are very short, most of them are incredibly long. And they have lots of words that you're going to have to look up, or just be comfortable not understanding. One of the books that he wrote is called The Master and His Emissary. And it tells the story, this is an old fable, of a master, a king, who has an emissary who sends out to meet with other foreign leaders and negotiate. And the emissary goes out and makes these negotiations on behalf of the king, and the kingdom is thriving. Well, eventually the emissary gets a big head and thinks, you know, I don't understand the value of the king in this proposition. I'm doing all the work. What do we need the king for? I have all the relationships. I'm the one working all the deals. And so the emissary organizes a coup, overthrows the king, takes control of power himself, and within years the kingdom is in shambles. It has fallen apart. The purpose of that story in the context of this book on the human brain is to describe the relationship between the two hemispheres tucked inside our skull. One side is larger than the other and thinks it knows it all. And the other side is good at very, very large picture thinking and understands the relationship of all of the parts and the connection between all of the parts in a broader context. That side of the brain that loves to see large pictures is also sometimes described as being a more emotional or more artistic side of the brain, which it's technically not. It's just different in how it organizes its thoughts. The emissary side is very logic-driven. It's very binary. It wants things to be yes or no, right or wrong, measurable, understandable, while the other side is comfortable with it not knowing. Now, what's really cool about the human brain is that it spends a lot of its time fighting itself. So the purpose of one hemisphere is in large part to restrict the activity of the other hemisphere, and vice versa. Either hemisphere left to their own devices would destroy the kingdom. Either hemisphere left to its own devices produces a myopic kind of disjointed view of the world. Imagine a bird. Imagine you're a bird, right? And you have to do two things simultaneously. You have to look for very, very, very tiny things on the ground that you can eat, while being hyper aware of your surroundings and predators that want to eat you. Got it? This is the two sides of the brain. And interestingly enough, over the last 50 or 60 years, the left side of the brain, which likes things to make sense, has gotten a foothold in our society, in human society, in tech, and has begun to train us to demand and to want things that satisfy that side of the brain's thinking. Things that are very measurable, very clear outcomes, KPIs. And yet, if you ask someone to recall a pleasant experience, a memorable experience, a highlight of their life, it will be an emotional experience with no good measurable bits. It'll be a kind word that somebody said. It will be a kind action. It will be somebody who took a moment with them. It will be music. It'll be art. It'll be something that fulfilled this other side of them. I think that this is important for us to understand and to think about, because we're in the customer service business. We're in the customer experience business. We're in the employee experience business, as the Great Resignation let us know so clearly. If you're not thinking about how the people that you're interacting with are feeling, then you're missing the point. The relationship that if you don't use tech to build that relationship, you're not using the tech well. I'm not saying to not use tech. I'm not saying tech doesn't have a place. I'm saying, is the measurement that you're using to evaluate the tech in your efforts to be objectional a flawed method of thinking about people who you interact with who aren't objective themselves and are, in fact, very emotional in their process? So in evaluating the technology that you bring on board, which tech brings happiness? Which tech brings joy? Which tech brings a frictionless experience that someone wants to repeat? Nobody wants you in their home for 3 hours trying to convince them to buy something. How do we know? Would any of you like me to come to your house for 3 hours and sit there trying to convince you to buy something? We know what colors humans like. We know what scenes, what evocative images make us feel peaceful, make us feel happy, make us feel good. There is a world of difference between being loved and feeling unfulfilled. And too often, the promise of technology is this will be the thing that brings you joy. And yet it leaves you feeling unfulfilled because it's lacking, it's missing this ability to resonate and connect with you in a way that's meaningful and joyful and pleasant. Should we select a more human metric? Should we just select tech that feels good? Could we design a better outcome? I told you I was going to try to ask more questions and provide answers. There is a theory in psychoanalysis called theory of object. We build emotional relationships with objects. Has anybody owned a vehicle that they assigned a gender and a name? Yes. Has anybody experienced feeling weird about stopping a song on their CD player, back when we had CD players, in the middle of the song? No? This is a thing. This is a very real thing. We build attachment to objects that have no feelings. A teddy bear, a blanket, my favorite pencil, the way in which I put my seatbelt on, the way I turn my computer on and off, my relationship to a brand. There's some companies that are so good at building this emotional relationship to a brand. I mean, environmentalists who love Apple that has no philanthropic arm and lost all their environmental ratings on their computers when they glued the batteries to the chassis so you'd have to buy a new one. And who's buying that computer? All the environmentalists. All the social justice warriors are supporting a company that doesn't support their cause. Because the brand found a way to burrow inside their hearts. By the way, your heart's up there. This thing doesn't actually feel anything. It's all the feeling is up there. And build a connection and build an attachment. So if you want, client for life, right? Whatever that whole thing is, right? All this, you should offer another service. How will you improve your milkshake to get more sales? It's not about improving the milkshake, is it? The milkshake doesn't need improvement. The milkshake's already fine. What needs improving is how you make that connection, how you make that bond to the client and the consumer, how you make that your company and your brand is invaluable to the people who work for you because they're so stoked to be working for you, for that organization. Because your clients are so stoked to have that sign in their yard because it's an emotional relationship. Those are your number one fans. Those are the reason they're coming to you is not the service that you offer. Everybody offers quality craftsmanship and good design and best prices and all that other nonsense, right? That's ribbons. You've got to think about the point of interaction where we connect. That's where it matters. So I'm giving you context now, right? I'm trying not to spell this out for you too literally, right? But this is the context. When do we hire that milkshake? Do we hire it on the way to buying it? Do we hire it the day before? When do we hire it? We hire it at the point of interaction. That's when we make that decision. That's when we make that connection. Which means that the tech that you select, in addition to being more human, in addition to being something that someone can have empathy for and can bind with, needs to be available to them in that form at the moment of interaction. That's the point where that particular device is useful, so that you can build on the human brain's natural wiring for theory of object. That all makes complete sense, right? Does your tech build a human connection? Brass tacks. Ecosystems versus parts. Is it better to pick one massive, self-contained biosphere or an assemblage of parts? Does anybody have power tools in this room? that they own and love? Does anybody have a relationship to a power tool brand in this room that they love? Yes. It's Makita, right? Who said no? Who said yes? Milwaukee. I have a really nice car. I love my car. I never actually gave my car a name. And I don't know, I think it's a they. I never went that far with my car. But, that was funny, right? Did my car come with a holder for my phone so that I could see my GPS? It did not. Did it come with all-weather mats? It did not. It did not stop me from buying that car because I can replace those things and I can add those things. Pick the thing that works best for you, for your client, for your culture, and then look for the appropriate components that work with it. And that if any one of those components doesn't like to play nice with other components, maybe that's not the best fit. Like BMW has cup holders, but just to mess with you, because they hate the fact that they have to put cup holders in cars, they put them right in front of the climate controls. So if you put a cup in the cup holder, you can't reach any of the climate controls unless you go through the computer interface on the wheel. It's like their subtle little jab. So that's ecosystem versus parts. What about the cost? What about those ruby slippers? So we looked internally at what we spend on our tech, and specifically subscriptions, things that we pay for year after year after year after year. We're not Case, and we're not Reborn. You know, we're 15 people, $3.5 million. I'm very happy. 18% net. I'm pretty good about that. We spend 5% of our predicted annual revenue on marketing. And it turns out we spend like, I think I put it up there. Yeah, $19,000 on tech. And what that told me was that we should probably turn that knob up a little bit. That while we were nervous, like, oh, can we pick up that thing? Oh, what's it going to cost me? Well, turns out we could probably afford to spend a little bit more on trying out new technology. And I think that my point in sharing this, if we lived in Japan, the Japanese push tech out into the marketplace before it's ready for a US prime time. And as a result, there is a lot of technology that comes out in the Japanese markets that doesn't make it 2 years. But that's normal, and people are used to it. And maybe that's something we should be used to with our technology. A willingness to pick things up, try them. If it's sticky, if it works, if it resonates, use it. But also, you know, if it's a needy partner, let them go. Right? If it turns out that they don't do the thing that they said that they do really well, let them go. Try something else. Make that part of your process instead of cementing to, well, this is how we do it, and this is how we're going to have to do it for the next 10 years, and we aren't going to make changes, so we have to be 100% sure about whatever it is that we're going to adopt, because if it isn't quite right, oh my gosh, we invested all this time and money, and now we've wasted all this time and money. Instead, change that and just be human about the thing. You know, you go to a restaurant, try different food, right? You're not 3, you can eat more than mac and cheese. Try different stuff out, see how it fits, do you like it? I want to say that the promise of technology can be pretty dazzling. The packaging, it's inspiring. But why does it so frequently fizzle and flop and frustrate? Because humans sit at the center. And with humans sitting at the center, it is absolutely critical in the context of technology that we consider this relationship and human behavior. I asked Jasper to draw me what human behavior looked like. That's what Jasper drew for me. Jasper's pretty good, don't you think? We have to apply the lens of the human. And we have to understand the human experience. I asked Jasper to tell me what the human experience looks like, and this is what I got. It is that interaction and reaction and path of action that is absolutely crucial. That interaction, reaction, path of action is absolutely crucial for us to understand, select, design, and implement a frictionless technology engagement. Because that, my friends, is what we're looking for. A frictionless technology engagement that feels human. That's what our consumers want. That's what we want.